A little better. Right. Well, all right, we're in Ecclesiastes 7. We're going to finish up the lesson we started 2 weeks ago. Benefiting in life. And the proposition was that we need to embrace the benefit in all things. Embrace the benefit in all things. If things need to be ideal for us to feel like life is valuable, then life will seem very empty very often. But if we can learn to see the benefit of trials, then we will have value in all aspects and circumstances of life. And so we were looking at those thoughts out of Ecclesiastes 7, verses 1 through 14. We looked at the first couple points here. First of all, we need to recognize there is benefit in all things, verses 1 through 6 of Ecclesiastes 7. This is a proposition of the Bible, of those that believe in a sovereign God who's in control, that all things can be worked out for our good by our sovereign God, and indeed are for those that love him. And this is a proposition, this is a truth we need to accept and recognize and own within our Christian lives. And Solomon is saying the same thing here in Ecclesiastes 7 about trials and difficulties in all aspects of life. Then we talk about benefiting in all things by avoiding the pitfalls of trials. The pitfalls of trials, and that was verses 7 through 10. We talked about the pitfall of corruption. Trials can and should lead to growth, but if we respond to them poorly, they can lead to corruption. We talked about impatience, how we can become impatient and proud. We talked about bitterness, how trials can lead to bitterness and anger and resentment. And we talked about nostalgia, or the thought of always looking for better days or better times and always wishing we were somewhere else, rather than embracing where God has placed us and living in the moment that God has given us now. And so those are some of the pitfalls of trials.
I think it's just memory.
Next, we want to look at practice wisdom. If we want to embrace the benefit of all things, we need to practice wisdom. And we see that in verses 11 and 12 of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by wisdom there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. When good days come, wisdom gained will help the blessings hang around, will help us keep the blessing. He says there in verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance. When you get an inheritance, it is good to have wisdom. When you receive an inheritance, it is a good thing to have wisdom. I have heard in the past that a high percentage of people that win the lottery lose it very, very quickly. And it is, and we're talking about big lottery winners, $1 million more or more lottery winners. A whopping 70% of those that win the lottery quickly lose it, end up bankrupt. And again, we're talking about 1 million plus lottery winners. I looked up a few stories. Marva Wilson of Kansas City was scammed out of $2 million by a family friend. Roger Griffiths, $2.5 million he won. He quit his job and spent money like mad. He lives in a trailer house now. Ronnie Music invested $3 million in a crystal meth business and ended up in prison. Yeah, that's not wisdom.
That's why I don't play the lottery.
That's why you don't play the lottery.
That's right.
I don't want to go to prison.
Yeah, you don't want to go to
That's
prison.
right.
They tend to give too much away. They invest very poorly without vetting the business or the person they're investing in. They do not have the wisdom that comes with experience and the understanding to handle that type of wealth. And so 70% of these people that win million plus lotteries lose it. And so when Solomon says here, wisdom is good with an inheritance, we understand the significance of that. It is good if you receive an inheritance to have wisdom when you receive it. Wisdom, and not just the wealth, is very important. And I think in the passage, given the context of trials and things, that the wisdom here is the wisdom that is gained from the trials. Wisdom gained from the trials is now beneficial to help the blessings last. When the blessings come, the trials that we have been through give us the wisdom to help those blessings last. Trials give us wisdom. One good way to maybe help kids with money management is getting them started early in life and helping them learn the pitfalls and understand money. When I was in 5th grade, I got a paper route. Now, I don't know if I'd suggest that anymore, having a 10-year-old run around the streets delivering papers early in the morning. But a paper route, the paper that I worked for required me to place a certain amount of money that I earned into a savings account. And of course, I was disgruntled about it at first. What? I don't get all my money right away? Of course, I chose the minimum amount required, and I don't remember what it is now. The smallest amount. My little brother, who started paper routes after I did, and I don't remember, maybe a year or so, for some reason had the wisdom to choose a higher amount. And so I remember after I had my paper out for 4 years and my brother maybe 3 or so, we moved away and we quit the paper routes. And I think I had $1,000 saved up from my paper route money, which was pretty good. And so I'd learned something. But my brother came out with $1,500 and I learned something else. I learned something. How much money can be earned by putting away small amounts each week and the value of saving. I also realized when I saw how much my brother had put away versus how much I had put away, how much money I'd wasted on candy and pop and entertainment over the years. And you learn. You learn by those things and by those mistakes and by those experiences. The trial of my little brother having that much more money than me, and that was a trial, that made a difference and an impact. We know James chapter 1, count it all joy, my brother, when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. And so when you get an inheritance, when you receive the blessing, it is good to have wisdom. And wisdom comes from the trials. Wisdom comes from the hard things. In fact, he says there in verse 12, wisdom is a defense. Wisdom is a defense. Wisdom is protection. Wisdom is safety from the premature loss of blessings and benefits, the good things in life. It says there as well that money is a defense, and people often find security in wealth. Yeah, I've got the windfall. I've got the millions. I've just got the huge inheritance. But really, it's that a lot of times that sense of security and wealth that causes those people to be very unwise. Many, many people lose those millions that they've won in the lottery because they feel invincible. They feel like money is a defense. Many things in life can give us a feeling of security, but wisdom helps us keep that. Wisdom helps us hold on to that from losing those blessings prematurely. A false sense of security often causes a person to overestimate their abilities, their capabilities, the things that they have. And so he says, wisdom is good with an inheritance. And again, wisdom comes from trials. Wisdom is a defense. For wisdom is a defense, he says, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to them that have it. Not only is wisdom here give us security, and not only is wisdom important to an inheritance and hanging on to blessings, wisdom leads to the enjoyment of those blessings. He says wisdom gives life to them that have it. When he says life, I don't think he's just talking about preventing us from dying. We talk about life in many different ways, and here I think it's talking about the abundance of life, the joy of life. Wisdom gives the joy of life and brings joy to life. Wisdom leads to the enjoyment of blessings. Wisdom gives life to them that have it. Wisdom allows us to enjoy the things of life. And again, I think wisdom comes from the trials. Trials help us appreciate the blessings when they come, don't they? Trials help us appreciate the blessings when they come. Where they say you don't appreciate what you have until you lose it. A spoiled rich kid who's never had to worry about a thing in their life does not appreciate what they have. You see some people with all they have and you wonder how could they not be happy, and yet they're not. Because they don't have wisdom, and they probably don't have the wisdom that comes from trials and difficulties and realizing how good they have it. I remember, how many ever you went to college and you remember going to school and getting the workload dumped on you at the beginning of the semester, and all that pressure. There has never quite been the feeling like taking that final exam at college for a semester and having maybe 6 weeks of Christmas break with no homework, no pressure, or having 3 months of summer. We've kind of maybe, we start work and our work is always there. It's not like school where there's an end for long periods of time. But you know what made that moment of the final test is done feel so exhilarating? You felt so free. It was all the pressure you'd been feeling all along. You really appreciated and felt and enjoyed that moment because of everything you'd experienced. And so it gives life. Wisdom helps us, gives life, gives enjoyment to life. The trial prepares us with added wisdom for the sake of protecting the blessings and fully enjoying the blessings when they come. And so we practice wisdom if we're going to benefit from all things. And then we trust God's plan. Trust God's plan. Verses 13 and 14. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God also hath set one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. God has allowed every trial that happens in our life. We know that. He uses it for good. We've already seen Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 11. There's a time for everything under the sun, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to earn and a time to spend, and a time for war and a time for peace. That whole section there ends with, he makes all things beautiful in his time. All things beautiful in his time. Can we name some things that were terrible and tragic that God used for good? There's some terrible and tragic things that God used for good. The cross. The cross. How do we top that one? The cross. What's Peter say? You by wicked hands killed, even as God fulfilled his plan to save mankind. Of course, we can think of Joseph. We can think of the persecution of the church and the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we understand, again, that God is using all things. God is using all things, and we need to believe it. We need to know it. And accept this truth. And so he says there in verse 13, consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? Who can change what God is doing? Who can undo what God is doing? Or who can correct the work of God and the plans of God? We have to trust God's plan because we have to live God's plan one way or another. He's sovereign. So we accept his plan. We accept the life that he gives. We don't try and straighten what he's made crooked. That doesn't mean we don't make wise choices, but we understand things are going to be a certain way at times. Verse 14, in the day of prosperity, be joyful. Trust God. If you are given good days and blessings, take full advantage of those days and enjoy them. Take full advantage of them. It says, in the days of prosperity, be joyful. Take full advantage of those days. Rejoice in the good ones. Our proposition there for this is if things need to be ideal for us to feel like life is valuable, then life will seem very empty very often. But if we can learn to see the benefits of trials, then we will have value in all aspects of life and all circumstances. And the proposition kind of points to being able to have joy in the difficult days, but it's also very important to our joy in the good days. Because what happens on the good days if we can't find value in all things? What do we do? What do I know I do it. This can't last forever. Something's going to come along. The next trial. If things have to be an ideal for us to enjoy life and find meaning in life, then we're always going to be looking ahead to the next trial, waiting for it to come, and it'll be stealing the joy of the days of blessing, the good days. Instead of saying, okay, if it comes and when it comes tomorrow, I will trust God that this is what needs to happen. I will trust God through it, and I will move through that when that comes. But now's the day of blessing, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm not going to borrow trouble from tomorrow. We have to be able, if we're going to have and enjoy life, to find the value in all things. In all things. And again, even our good days, the joy of those good days will be lost. It's the worry of the bad days, the worry of the difficult days as we borrow from tomorrow, the troubles of tomorrow. And so rejoice in them and learn to trust God for the trials to come. Rejoice in the good days. But in the days of adversity, consider. So on the good days, rejoice, trusting God for the future. And on the difficult days, use them to consider, use them to ponder. In the days of adversity, consider, ponder, think. Adversity, trials, difficulty draws us to contemplation. It causes us to ask questions that we might not otherwise ask. We need to be asking ourselves, what am I learning? What is this trial revealing to me? What is God doing? In the days of adversity, ponder, consider, think. Because God has designed them both. God also has set one over against the other. God has designed them both. You know, God's goals for our life are far grander than our temporary comfort. God's plans for us are far greater than a life of constant comfort. As we learned Sunday, God is in constant pursuit of his glory, which is of immeasurable value. God has designed life, and each aspect of life is under his sovereign control, and we trust him. We trust him. In the days of prosperity, we enjoy it, trusting him for the future. In the days of adversity, we consider, we think, we ask, what's God doing? That final phrase there, to the end that man should find nothing after him. Most understand that that means that we never truly know God's plan. We just have to trust God. We never really know why God allowed and does everything he does in our life. Why did he let us have a good day here and then a difficult day here? Why did it happen exactly this way instead of happening that way? God doesn't give us all the exact answers to exactly why. What does he give us instead? A knowledge of himself.
See God's wisdom.
Yeah, many times. But still there's often those unanswered questions. Why? But God, and yes, we do have some of those times we can draw clear parallels and say this happened for this reason. But God reveals himself to us, not always his plan, not always his specific purposes. But having revealed himself to us, we trust him. And we trust that he gives us the days of prosperity for us to be joyful and rejoicing, and he gives us the days of adversity for us to consider. We trust God that he will use it for our good. God does as he has planned. We trust his plan. And so Solomon examines here just adversity. He examines difficulty. He examines trials of life. He wants us to be able to embrace the benefit of all things. If things need to be ideal for us to feel like life is valuable, then life will seem empty often. But if we can learn to see the benefit of trials and difficulties, then we will have value in all aspects and circumstances of life. And that is what Solomon is trying to help us understand in this passage of Scripture. Any comments or questions?
Things we'll never understand until we get to heaven.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple.
Yep. All right, well, let's take some prayer praise items then. Prayer praise items tonight. Of course, Rod Longnecker, the COVID diagnosis. You say he's got a breathing treatment.
I think it's like
Okay. But it's still definitely struggling to breathe, and it's definitely been hard on him.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. We'll still keep them in our prayers. Other prayer items tonight. Thankful for the wedding on Saturday.
I know, a couple of weeks ago, must do good. Knee replacement.
Mm-hmm. Cody is doing okay. She's in a bit of pain, but she's recovering.
We have an update on Marlene.
Yeah, Marlene's, she's still got a lot of pain. So She's still on pain medications. So yeah, be praying for her. She's not sure. She should be finding out soon whether or not she will have to have radiation or not. So yeah, radiation or chemo. Yeah, just find out what the next step is. They said they would contact her within a week, and that week will be tomorrow. So pray for Marlene. A lot of pain. Next steps.
We had a nice visit from Lemoyne yesterday.
Oh, good.
Talked for a while.
Mhm.
Apparently, Dick's younger brother, Dan, is living with him, and Dan has brain cancer and has quit taking his meds.
Okay.
So, kind of a difficult situation there for the family.
Yeah.
Danny's living with Richard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dick Gilbert's brother Dan is living with Dick and has cancer, has quit taking his treatments. Okay. So keep them in your prayers. Anything else tonight specifically? Well, let's go ahead and divide up for prayer then. Let's divide up people.